Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Sunita Dubey from New Delhi, India. Thank you all for joining in. It's really exciting to see so many participants joining in from across the world. So today I'll be speaking on glaucoma drainage devices, basic techniques, and I'll also be touching upon the management of common complications which you encounter commonly. I'll start with this poll question. Which tube implants do you prefer to do in your practice? Valved implants, non-valved implants, both depending on the situation, or you do not perform implants at all? Okay, so I'm glad to know that most of you are performing tube implant surgeries, and so that will be very helpful for me to make you understand. So let me get started now. So as we know, tube implants are a viable alternative, and they are gaining popularity with better designs, material, and techniques, which significantly improve their long-term outcomes. So there are a variety of tube implants which are available across the globe, but in India, we are using AGV extensively, and also now the RD implant, which is a non-valved implant. It is very, very cost effective and very good to use. And it has not been just used in India extensively, but also in many other countries. So I'll be mainly talking about the AGV and RD, and we don't have Clear Path, which is the latest addition in the category, and which is a non-valved AGV. So as we know, tube implants are the primary choice for most of the complex secondary glaucomas, be it inflammatory glaucomas, neovascular glaucomas, glaucomas associated with syndromes, post-PK glaucomas, post-VR surgery glaucoma, or in patients who need second surgeries or more or frequent surgeries, they are the primary choice. Also, with the promising results of TVT study, their use is increasing even in primary glaucomas. It's very, very important to meticulously plan your surgery and do a proper preoperative evaluation. It's important to take proper history and assess the patient for uveitis, neovascular glaucoma, previous surgeries, the conjunctival scarring, presence of scleral buckle or squint surgeries, as they can alter the position of the muscles, and they also affect the type of implant and the site of implant choice. So the type of implant will depend on the clinical diagnosis and the surgical site. Superiotemporal is the preferred site for the obvious reasons that it is very easy to perform surgery in the superiotemporal quadrant, and there is low incidence of ocular motility disorders and low incidence of erosion of the implant. However, if the eye has undergone multiple surgeries, it is important to choose the quadrant which has minimal scarring. Also, since most of these eyes have undergone multiple surgeries, the conjunctiva may not be good enough. So be prepared to use autologous or exogenous grafts. Proper placement of the tube is very important for better long-term outcomes. And therefore, it's important to assess the extent of peripheral anterior synechia and status of lens, which are important determinants of position of placement of tube. Also, since most of these eyes are associated with comorbidities, it's important to manage the primary pathology as they can lead to post-operative complications. If the eye has vitreous or silicone oil or inflammation or hyphema, then you have to first manage that before planning for implant surgery. Now I'm going to show you the basic technique of AGV implant. It's very important to have good exposure of the surgical site. So you can use superior rectus suture or corneal traction suture or both. In this case, I have used both to have very good exposure. Conjunctival flap can be limbal based or fornix based. So in most of my cases, I make limbal based conjunctival flap as it is easy to make and the exposure is also very good. And if you have fibrosis close to limbus, then you can go slightly posteriorly. It's important to dissect deep into the fornix so as to create room for the placement of plate. I always measure it. It should be 8 to 10 millimeter from the limbus, depending upon the quadrant. Priming of the AGV implant is very essential because if you don't prime it, it may not work. And it is better to have a stream, although you can also have just the trickle. You should not reject the device if you just have trickle. And when you insert the plate, you have to keep 2-3 things in mind, which are very important, that you do not hold the device at the valve area. Otherwise, you can damage the valve area, and the device should not keep popping out. If it keeps popping out, that means you are not under the Tenon's capsule and you are maybe over the Tenon's capsule. And then once it is in position, you suture it with the help of either 9-0 nylon suture or 8-0 nylon suture, depending upon the on the availability. But you have to use a non-absorbable suture. You can just rotate the notch of the suture into the eyelet so as to avoid erosion in the post-operative period. Now, coming to the very crucial step of insertion of tube. The tube can be placed in the anterior chamber or sulcus or pars plana, but it's important to, here I'm creating this scleral bed so that the tube fits into this bed and doesn't move here and there. So you have to cut the tube in a manner that 2 to 3 millimeter of it goes inside the anterior chamber with the bevel up if you're planning to put it in the anterior chamber. And then with 23 gauge needle, you go inside the anterior chamber and then insert the tube. So once you have put this suture, you have to cover it up with the scleral patch graft. We have availability of scleral patch graft. So we cover the tube with the help of scleral patch graft. There are various ways for insertion of the tube. You may not necessarily use the patch graft always, but it is better to use it. And once you have covered the tube with the scleral patch graft, you close the conjunctiva, as you can see here. The advantage with a limbal based flap is that you can take a bite to the episclera for better anchoring of the sclera at the limbus. So at the end of surgery, your AC should be well formed, the tube should be properly placed, and there should be no leakage. You can, in absence of scleral or any patch graft, you can also use this scleral flap and you can insert your tube inside this under this scleral flap as you make the scleral flap for trabeculectomy in a similar way, although it has to be slightly larger. And then you insert the tube and then suture the scleral flap. Another way is to make a scleral tunnel, as you can see in the video on the right side. They are very old videos. Now I no longer use these techniques. So you are making the scleral tunnel and you are coming out on the other side and then inserting the tube through this tunnel and then into the anterior chamber. So if you don't have patch graft, you can use these techniques. You can also insert the tube in the pars plana. I'm going to show you this patient of chemical burn where we planned our tube implant with K-Pro. As you can see, the cornea was vascularized and heavily scarred. So after implantation of K-Pro, here, as you can see here, you insert the AGV plate in one quadrant and do a proper vitrectomy. If you're planning to put the tube in pars plana, the vitrectomy has to be complete. It has to be complete pars plana vitrectomy. And then you can insert your tube from one of the ports, the port which you have made in the superior temporal quadrant. So you don't have to make separate port. And then this is the end of surgery. So at the end of the procedure, you should be able to see your tube through the pupillary area when you have put it in the vitreous. The insertion of tube through the scleral tunnel is getting very popular nowadays, and it is because the chances of tube extrusion are pretty less when you use a long tunnel. Maybe 4 to 6 millimeter posterior to the limbus, you start with the tunnel, make a tunnel either with a small crescent or with a needle, and then insert a tube through it. And you don't even need a patch graft when you're making a tunnel. Now coming to the ADI implant, which is again commonly done. And there are some differences between the valved and non-valved implants. Here the conjunctival flap is larger since you have to loop the muscles, and the thimble based flap may be better because you have to identify the muscles and it will make the identification of the muscles easier. And as you dissect into the fornix, you try to isolate the muscle. You can use muscle hooks, 2 muscle hooks, or you can use the muscle hook I am going to show you. So these are the radial incisions, pretty large conjunctival flap as you can see here. So this is the muscle hook, which has an eyelet and where you can use a 4-0 silk suture around it. And as you loop around the muscle, you can pull one end of the suture to separate the entire muscle. As you can see here, especially when you are a beginner, you can use this technique and this will help you to isolate the muscle properly, put your implant behind the muscle and even give a traction through these sutures. So this is the ADI implant. As you can see, it's a flexible implant. So you first introduce one end or one wing under lateral rectus and then another wing under the superior rectus, and then suture it as you would do for the valved implant. And another difference is that you have to ligate the tube so as to prevent hypotony in the early post-operative period. So here I am just fixing the tube with nylon suture, as you can see here. And here I am putting a ligature around the tube with 6-0 Vicryl. You can use 6-0 Vicryl or 7-0 Vicryl. And ligate it tightly so that there is no flow of fluid through the tube. So I have put 2 ligature tube sutures here. And then I'm just checking by injecting fluid. There should not be any flow of the fluid. You can see this air bubble is just coming back. And then rest of the procedure is same. As you hear the venting slits, to facilitate egress of aqueous in the early post-operative period, you can just give 2 or 3 venting slits into the tube. And then rest of the procedure is the same. There are a lot of patients who require combined surgeries. So it has now become a common practice to perform phaco with tube and IOL in my practice. And this is one patient who was one-eyed. The other eye, as you can see, was PR inaccurate. And the right eye vision was also very less. And he had total leukomatous scarring with very high pressures, as you can see here. The pressures were in 40s and 50s. So I planned phaco plus IOL with AGV in this patient. And first the PK was done. So after PK, I planned this phaco with AGV in this. So the temporal incision was made. Phaco was performed, and then temporally the superotemporal quadrant was chosen for placement of the implant. The procedure is more or less same. You can see that the tube is placed in sulcus. So you have to, I think, put a lot of visco to expand the sulcus so that you can easily put the tube into the sulcus over the IOL and under the iris. You can see here. And then rest of the procedures is same. So this is the post-operative picture. The tube is nicely placed in the sulcus obliquely, as you can see here in both the pictures. And the patient, the pressure is well controlled after the combined surgery, IOL plus tube, and the vision had also improved. So now coming to another question, poll question, which you have to answer. The question is, tube can be performed as primary procedure in situations when intraocular surgery is needed for another ocular condition. Patient cannot come for frequent follow-up. In eyes with inflammation and neovascularization. In patients who are contact lens dependent. And the last choice is all of the above. Okay, so excellent. I think for most of you, the answer is correct. The answer is all of the above. So tube implants can be performed, as I said earlier, in situations when the patient needs multiple surgeries, when the patient cannot come for frequent follow-up, especially with valved implants, because you do not need so much of care post-operatively as you would require in trabeculectomy. And in eyes with inflammation and neovascularization, obviously tube implant is the first choice because the results of trabeculectomy are not so good. In contact lens dependent patients, since the bleb in the trabeculectomy is quite anterior, it is not recommended, and so tube implant is better. So in all these indications, tube implant will be the primary procedure of choice. Now, coming to the post-operative course, as you see the patient the next day, you may see a little bit of hypotony. As you can see in this picture, there will be diffuse edema and congestion, and there will be some vessels over the episcleral plate. And in valved implant, you may see hypertensive phase with rising IOP. And as you can see here, the bleb appears raised and tense and distended with aqueous. However, after resolution of hypertensive phase or during the stable phase, which is achieved over 3 to 6 months, you will see this well circumscribed thick-walled bleb. So hypotensive phase, if the AC is well formed and there are no other complications, you can just observe, just keep the patient on topical steroids and cycloplegics. You don't have to do anything unless there's tube corneal touch or lens corneal touch. And hypotony is more common in case of valved implant initially, but later on with non-valved implant when the tube opens up. And it is also common in patients who have inflammation, choroidal detachment, cyclitis, or ciliary body shutdown. So one needs to be very, very careful in these complicated eyes. It is also more common in eyes which are myopic and in ophthalmic eyes. Hypertensive phase is again very common in patients with valved implants, and it can happen as early as 2 to 6 weeks. And the cause is early exposure of the conjunctiva and Tenon's capsule to aqueous with pro-inflammatory cytokines during early fibrosis and scarring. Also, the material, biomaterial, and the consistency of plate are the contributory factors. So in the initial phase, you don't have to do much. You just have to start aqueous suppressants and steroids with digital massage. And if the condition doesn't resolve in time, then you have to do the removal of the cyst wall or bleb needling, although the results are not very good. And so you may need to revise the surgery with another shunt. So this is the patient. Typically, you can see the bleb is getting tenser and tenser and elevated. And this is the congested raised bleb. This is another patient which I operated recently. So this patient underwent multiple surgeries. There was history of cataract surgery with SFIO, LRT surgeries, and then glaucoma surgeries. So his conjunctiva was very scarred, and I did tube implant in him because the pressure was not controlled on maximal medical therapy, and AGV was done. So initially the bleb was well formed, but later on, 1 month post-operatively, this you can see the bleb, which is so much encysted, and you can even see this bleb from a distance and like a protrusion in the superior temporal quadrant. So for high tension blebs, what you can do is that you can just tap the bleb using 30 gauge needle on slit lamp. However, serial taps may be required, and the logic behind these taps is that it may alter remodeling of the bleb and can resolve the hypertensive phase. However, the results are unpredictable. However, it is a very simple procedure and can be tried on slit lamp in your. Now coming to another question, which of the following statements regarding hypertensive phase is false? Hypertensive phase is seen because of cytokines and inflamed aqueous in early postoperative period. More common in valved implants, may get resolved with use of steroids and aqueous suppressants. And commonly seen in eyes where tube implant is performed is primary glaucoma surgery. 50% of you are correct. It is the answer which is not correct is that it is commonly seen in patients where the tube implant is performed for primary glaucoma surgery. So rest, all the 3 statements are correct. Now coming to complications. So complications can occur during early or late post-operative period. They can be valve related as hypotony or hypertensive phase, as we have discussed. There are unique set of complications which are related to the design of tube implants, and they are outflow obstruction, conjunctival erosion, implant exposure, tube migration, or diplopia, or they could be related to surgery, like corneal decompensation, endophthalmitis, vision loss, or surgical failure. So these surgery-related complications can occur even after trabeculectomy. So these are common complications which can be seen in early post-operative period, like blockage of tube because of blood or iris or vitreous, Tube corneal touch and corneal decompensation can happen over a period of time, and the implant extrusion is pretty rare, though tube erosion can be seen in some patients. So outflow obstruction in early phase could be because of blood, fibrin, iris tissue, lens material, or vitreous. Some of them may be transient, and they can respond to topical steroids and cycloplegics, like blood and fibrin can retract with topical steroids and cycloplegics. Iris strands and vitreous strands can be managed with ND-YAG laser. And some of these patients, surgical intervention may be required if they're not responsive to conservative treatment. So this is one of my patients with neovascular glaucoma where I did tube implant. And as you can see here is one strand of the blood which is going into the lumen of the tube, causing raised intraocular pressure. So by just using low energy at the tip of the tube, you can cause retraction of the clot. The clot will just pass through the tube, and you can get the clearance of the tip of the tube, as you can see here. So this is a very simple procedure, and you can do in your OPD. Another patient who has a history of trauma 3 years back, and he had inferior RD, and he presented 3 years later, and where VR surgery was done. So the patient had very intractable glaucoma after doing VR surgery. Initially, there was pupillary block. So we did YAG PI, but it was not successful. The silicone oil was removed, and limited translateral cytophotocoagulation was done. However, after a few weeks, the pressure again rose, and then I planned phaco with Emmet glaucoma valve in this patient because the patient also developed cataract. However, because of sudden hypotony, there was bleeding in the anterior chamber, and you can see this, the tube getting clogged by blood. He didn't respond that much to conservative treatment, and then again, YAG laser was the savior, and you can see the lumen of the tube clearing up with YAG. So it's a very simple and effective procedure. Another patient who had a history of trabeculectomy in early infancy. So it was a case of congenital glaucoma, and both eyes trabeculectomy was done somewhere else. And when he presented to us, his pressures were very high. So there was failed trabeculectomy, there was flat bleb. So I decided to do RD implantation in this particular patient. I think you should introduce the tube very away from the cornea, and sometimes it touches the iris, although it doesn't make much of a difference if you're close to the iris, but sometimes iris can get incarcerated into the tube. And again, a very simple procedure. I just gave 2-3 shots with the YAG laser over here at the tip of the tube where the iris was incarcerated. And you can see there was the iris incarceration was relieved, and the tube has cleared of iris. Another patient who had history of trauma, and there was no obvious vitreous in the anterior chamber when I performed tube implant. But on 3rd or 4th postoperative day, you can see here the tube got blocked by this strand of vitreous, which appeared to be coming from behind the lens through the zonular dialysis. So since it was not possible to cut this strand, this was a thick strand, it was not possible to cut this strand with the YAG laser. We performed limited anterior vitrectomy and pulling the vitreous tag with an end gripping forceps helped in clearing the vitreous from the lumen of the tube. Now coming to second very important complication, which is very specific to the tube implant surgery, and which is conjunctival erosion or the tube erosion. And it's very important to manage this complication properly because it poses a risk for endophthalmitis. So conjunctival tube erosion, there's a difference between conjunctival tube erosion and wound dehiscence. So tube erosion is defined as exposure of any part of the tube after 1 month of surgery. And if it happens before 1 month, that is in the immediate post-operative period, it is called wound dehiscence. As you can see here, this is the wound dehiscence. And this wound dehiscence could be managed with topical steroids and lubricants and systemic doxycycline. Doxycycline may have anti-inflammatory activity, and along with improved ocular surface with the use of frequent lubrication, this defect or conjunctival dehiscence was reepithelialized completely in 2 weeks. So why does tube exposure occur? It is because of the excessive tension overlying the tube or from immune mechanism mediated inflammatory process. So there's an ischemic damage to the conjunctiva or the repeated mechanical force caused by eyelid blinking. So eyelid blinking just rubs the conjunctiva over the tube. And if the conjunctiva is not in a very healthy state, like if the patient has undergone multiple surgery or if the patient is a immunocompromised patient like diabetic or a patient is having some hormonal changes, then such type of complication can happen. It can be prevented by using long scleral tunnel as I had shown earlier. And if the tube is in the sulcus or if the tube enters the eye at 12 o'clock rather than 10 or 2 o'clock, there are less chances of exposure. So tube should enter the eye, and if it is slightly, it is not straight, but it is slightly deviated on one side and enters at 12 o'clock position, then the chances are less. Suturing of tube to the underlying sclera makes the tube flatter, hence less friction over the with the overlying patch graft. So it's important, that is why, to suture the tube onto the sclera and also covering the tube with a patch graft. Or if you have made a tunnel, it is very tightly fitted into the tunnel and it is flat onto the sclera. So prior to suturing, also to prevent the immunological rejection, it's important to clean the donor scleral patch graft, abrade all the iris tissue as it can lead to immunological reaction and inflammation. In high-risk patients, additional techniques may decrease the tube exposure, as I have already explained. Now, how do you manage tube erosion? So what you have to do is that you have to dissect the eroded conjunctiva, fix a tube to the scleral bed, put a patch graft. I'm going to show you the video. And if the conjunctiva is in a good state, if it is not necrosed or avascular, then you can just do conjunctival advancement if the erosion is small. And you can also use conjunctival graft or autograft if conjunctiva is not healthy, or you can use pedicle graft. So pedicle graft basically is from deep into the fornix. It allows importation of distal vascularized tissue to the sclera, so to the area. So if the conjunctiva at the site of erosion is necrosed and scars, then you should use pedicle graft or a free conjunctival graft. So as you can see here, so you have to just dissect the conjunctiva, secure the tube in place, put the sclera, the graft, any kind of patch graft over it, and then suture the conjunctiva. So I'm just going to show you this patient who was referred to me by some doctor, and there was exposure of the scleral patch graft here, and I decided to do the suturing, the repair of it. And when I opened the conjunctiva, I saw that the plate was sutured horizontally, and the tube is quite short here. So I think it was inadvertently cut during the procedure, since there was no availability of the of the AGV implant. I decided to put the same implant after cleaning it properly, and then introduce the tube. I'll just show you again. So you just give a incision into the conjunctiva and not in the Tenon's capsule, just to bring it forward, make it more mobile, and then use of tissue glue, which sticks the conjunctiva well onto the scleral patch graft. And however, one has to suture it so as to be doubly sure that it doesn't retract. And then over it, the amniotic membrane, which is again freely available to us, and it helps the regeneration of conjunctiva. So this is another patient who was referred to us from elsewhere for right eye tube repositioning. And there was tube exposure, as you can see here. And this patient had multiple tube exposures. And the tube repositioning was done with AMG and patch graft in 2019. And again in December 2020, there was tube exposure. So as you can see here, there was tube exposure at 12 o'clock. So we were just assessing the status of conjunctiva. And you just dissect the conjunctiva, undermine it, so that later on you get enough conjunctiva to suture back. This patient had cataract also, but we decided to just do the repair in one sitting because of this inflammation. So the tube was removed from the anterior chamber. Earlier, I thought of removing the implant, but then decided to put it at a separate site. So just cleaned it and then made another track on the temporal side. So the tube had enough length, and it was 2 to 3 millimeter inside the anterior chamber. It was sutured. And then the scleral patch graft, which would cover the previous track also. And we have this eye bank, so we have the tissue with us. So we just cut the patch graft to the required length, and then just made it half thickness. And then sutured it. And then we sutured the conjunctiva over it. As you can see, here we separated the tenons and the conjunctiva, as the conjunctiva was short. And so the tenons capsule was covering the scleral patch graft and then conjunctiva over it. Since conjunctiva was short, we decided to use amniotic membrane in this particular patient. and then over it a contact lens was placed. So the patient is doing well. It was done almost 6 months back. So this was a repeated exposure, and this is the post-op picture. So this is my last video. So this was a patient who again underwent multiple surgeries. She was a uveitic patient, and she had keratouveitis, recurrent viral keratitis with uveitis, and the patient had multiple grafting done, and then she developed glaucoma, and she also underwent limited transscleral cyclophotocoagulation somewhere else before before tube implant surgery. So she presented with chronic hypotony, delayed hypotony. When she came to me, her pressure was just 1 or 2 millimeter mercury, and that was a chronic hypotony with macular striations. And so first I decided to form the anterior chamber with Helon GV, but that didn't help. And then I decided to do the intraluminal tube stent with the help of the 4-0 Prolene suture, which is a very well described technique. And this is a simple procedure, and it's not very invasive because you don't have to remove the implant. What you do is you just make a corneal stab incision with the side port blade, inject the eye with Helon, make another incision, and then introduce this oroprolene suture into the lumen of the tube. Grab the tube with the help of microforceps, which you use in retina surgery, and then cut it, and then suture it. And at the end of surgery, the AC is well formed, the pressure was okay. Although 4-0 Prolene suture would not reduce the aqueous flow completely because it blocks the outflow facility by 60 to 65%. 3-0 Prolene suture is a better choice, but then it is very difficult to thread the tube with 3-0 Prolene because it is thick. So 4-0 Prolene, if you are able to reduce the outflow facility by 60 to 65%, that should be good enough in most of the cases. So this patient still has hypotony, but not that much. The pressure has now increased to 6 to 7 millimeter mercury. So coming to the last poll question, which of the following statements is false? Tube implant patients do not require frequent follow-up. Valved implants have to be primed. Tubes in non-valved implants need to be ligated. Patch graft is mandatory to cover tube in all cases. 22, 23, 24 or 25 gauge needle can be used to make entry track for tube. Yeah, so the correct answer is patch graft is mandatory to, the false statement is the patch graft is mandatory to cover tube in all cases. Because it is not required if you are making a tunnel, you don't require to put a patch graft, and rest all these statements are true. Valve implants have to be primed, as I said, and non-valve implants have to be ligated. And you can use 22 gauge needle, 23 gauge or 24 gauge needle to make the needle track, or even 25 gauge in patients who have very low scleral rigidity. 25 gauge needle can also be used. So to conclude, it's important to do a meticulous examination pre and post operatively. Follow up your patient, look for hypotensive phase and hypertensive phase, and especially if you've used a non-valved implant at the time of ligature release, There can be sudden hypotony, flat AC, and inflammation, which you need to take care of. You have to communicate with your patients. You need to tell them about the hypotony, that they may get reduced vision, or their pressure may reduce at the end of 1 month or 6 weeks. So you need to educate the patient about the sequelae of non-valve implants. Recognize hypertensive phase, and nowadays the routine practice is to give aqueous suppressants, to start them in the initial phase only when the pressure is beyond 10 millimeter mercury. So you don't have to wait for hypertensive phase to develop. You have to start aqueous suppressants before that, and that drastically reduces the hypertensive phase. Look for the development of complications, especially in high risk eyes, and you have to perform surgery meticulously, and early recognition of complications are the key to improved success. Thank you very much for your kind listening.